Hey there, it's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, and we all know what that means. Another riveting live stream of Behind Breaking Bond. You're obviously watching this because you care about the issue that we're seeing here in Harris County with repeat violent offenders being released on multiple felony bonds to allegedly continue their crime spree. Joining me is
his cohort in Breaking Bond is Andy Kahan, Director of Victim Services, Crime Stoppers of Houston, and founder of Axe Grinding No Bond Coffee.
Which we do not recommend that you snort or sniff in any way.
One bond, one sip per customer.
That's right, that's right. Also joining us, we have a special guest today, City Council Member Michael Kubash. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. You know, I've been in the bail bond industry for almost 30 years, and I have a firm understanding of dealing with these issues. And so I think that's what makes this really important for me to be a part of this. And it's also that I called a press conference back in February at Rose of Sharon Church, and we read out all the names of those who had been murdered, and we did that, and then I began to methodically go through every case and file a judicial bar complaint against every judge who had let somebody out that was a habitual violent offender.
That's a very interesting route to go. Kind of explain to people that aren't really familiar with that. What does that involve? What exactly did you do?
There's a form that you can get online. Anybody can do it. You could do it yourself, and it is a form that you fill out, but you want to fill it out as truthfully and as detailed as possible. What the judge did that endangered the public, because a judge takes an oath of office, just like a council member, right, to protect and defend the people. That's what government's supposed to do. That's our job. And so when they let these habitual violent offenders out without really looking at their criminal history to see what they had been doing, and to let them out either on a taxpayer-funded free bond, which I call a PR bond, or a real low bond, and to put them back out in the community only to prey on the community that they came from.
The one thing about what you did, though, a lot of times the judicial board, they can decide that they're going to do a private reprimand, right? Where it's not public. If they decided to take action, do something, the public doesn't know.
Right, and not only that, the person who files the complaint, when he gets a response back from the judicial bar, they don't mention the judge's name in it. They give him a code. So as a result of me filing, 20, 25, 30 of these against these judges, I had to meticulously see which one that actually, when I filed it, which one went to which judge, because otherwise I wouldn't know. All of them basically had the same type of letter came back. And they say they're investigating it, but I don't know if you'll ever know what the judicial.
How long does the process last? So you file it. Now what happens?
Well, they under like a certain timeline.
Within about 2 to 3 weeks, you get a response, and
acknowledging that they got your complaint.
And then it goes in. As far as I'm concerned, it goes in the never land, because you don't hear from it anymore unless you see it in the newspaper that a judge has been removed from office.
What would happen if you followed up with them and say, hey, just checking the status?
I don't believe that they would respond and let me know what they had decided.
Because if they say, even if it's a private reprimand, they don't say what it is, right? I mean, if they took action and it's a private reprimand, that nobody knows anything.
That's why I believe the Supreme Court of Texas, who's over all of the bar, the attorney bar and the state bar, I think they need to review their processes, because I think they're very flawed, because the citizenry never gets to really see
right
what happens.
Well, and you get the feeling that I hate to say this, but it's almost like judges protecting other judges.
Absolutely.
Because since there's not a lot of openness about the whole thing. We're up to what, 80,
175 people that have been murdered, albeit allegedly, but actually some of them are now getting convicted.
Yeah.
We started looking at a lot of the guys that we did very early on in the breaking bond are now actually getting convicted of murder and being sentenced to very lengthy sentences as well. But 175, of the 175, 138 since 2020. And that's a pretty telling number.
Yeah, I mean, when we started this about 2 years ago, I guess, it was like a few, and then it kind of gets up to like 60, and you're like, wow, it's 60, and look at where we are now. I mean, it's really disturbing, because anyone can make the argument that that's 174 Harris County residents who would be alive today, who would be walking around if it wasn't for a judge's decision to repeatedly release a violent offender.
And that's the key criteria again is, for example, Councilmember Kubash, if you were out on one bond and you were charged with murder,
you'd never be on breaking bond. You would not be counted.
And there were, as you well know, there were dozens of offenders who were out on a single bond who were charged with murder. But the criteria that we developed at Crime Stoppers was it had to be more than one felony bond.
Right.
Or a felony PR get out of jail free card, or if you were on bond and you forfeited your bond and became a fugitive.
Right.
Those were the categories that we looked at to be included on this list.
And again, one of the most disturbing things to me is there's no one that we're aware of in Harris County that actually is keeping track of how many of these defendants are now wanted fugitives. We find them just kind of, we're looking at somebody's track record, if you will, and then we'll see that they're wanted. Yeah.
So when you were in the bail bond industry, what did you guys do? You get somebody out on bond, and then all of a sudden, how does it work? I mean, they're required to check in with you guys?
Well, first of all, whenever I bonded somebody, I always had family members, friends, employer. I had people that
you had like a circle. That's really important, isn't it?
Right. And whenever they let them out now without any of that behind the scenes to protect, because those are the people I would call if they were going to miss court.
Yeah.
And that's the ones that's why the DAs would call me and say, hey, would you send me these people's file so that they needed to know who their influence circle was.
Right.
And so I would always help the DA on those cases by giving them that information. But there's no accountability, there's no responsibility.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a whole different way of doing things now, isn't it?
The bail system was a proven system of accountability, and it's been totally dismantled.
Yeah. Well, and two, I mean, I'm sure, and again, I understand that misdemeanor offenses, everybody gets a PR bond, and that I understand that, but that had to take a toll on the bail bonding industry, right? Because that was a bulk of business.
65% of the money that I made from bailing was bailing people out on misdemeanor cases. But remember this, it's a misdemeanor to steal your catalytic converter off of your vehicle.
Right.
And they let you ride out, you go steal another one,
Right.
let you out. So there's no accountability. If you don't go to court, what happened? Nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's a misdemeanor case, nobody wants to arrest you again. That's why crime is on the rise, and that's why so many crimes, as Andy knows, are never reported.
Right. Yeah, I think people just think, well, nothing's going to happen.
Especially property crimes.
Right.
Property crimes.
Right.
I mean, these are usually your career habitual offenders. Let's be real. Most people don't go around killing people
Right.
for a living.
Yeah.
But they will rob you
Yes.
and they will steal your stuff because that's what they do.
Yes.
But we treat them like night and day. And that's something we're going to seriously look at next session on changing enhancement of habitual property offenders.
Right. And yeah, you're right. More people are offended by somebody stealing their car or their catalytic converter or putting a gun to your head and saying, give me all your money. I mean, that, of course, those crimes occur much more often than murderers do. One of the things too that we pointed out in a breaking bond a few weeks ago, and you tell me what you think about this, and this was stats that the police union had compiled. The number of people in misdemeanor court that actually show up, it's minuscule.
Right.
It's like these people it's like they don't show up anymore. I've heard people saying, and you've got to wonder if the whole misdemeanor court system is going to collapse because you don't have people, they're not going back to court. And it's like, then they end up dismissing cases. They're so backlogged. It's like, what exactly is going on down there?
Well, that's why the system's going to collapse, because they're not holding people accountable on the small crimes that eventually they become bigger criminals.
Right.
Because, and listen, we talk about murders. Murder's the hot topic. The truth of the matter is, only about half of the people that are murdered are they ever found out who did it.
Yeah.
Is that about the statistic?
There's hundreds and hundreds of unsolved, cases right now. And that's why we've always said it's 175 known.
No.
Right. Yes.
And we know that's more because we know there's so many others out there
Yeah.
that haven't been charged.
Right.
yet.
Yeah. All the ones that we're finding, it starts when someone is charged with murder. There's a press release put out that, so-and-so's charged with murder, start looking at it, and then that's when you find out whether or not they were out on multiple bonds.
Right.
So let me ask you this, Councilman. So back when you ran your industry in the bail bond industry, if someone had forfeited their bond, what happens? I mean, you can't find it. Walk us through what happens.
There's been very few people that I have been unable to find, because I have that circle of family. And so I had a former police officer in Harris County hiding her daughter who had committed a felony down in Harris County, but she was in Galveston. So I had to have another officer who works the former officer that works as a bounty hunter to hunt her down and to figure it out. And we was able to eventually catch her. But I've got 9 months on a felony to catch a person. If I don't catch them in 9 months, I got to pay the full forfeiture. And so if the bond's set at $5,000, that's a $5,000 forfeiture plus court costs. If it's a $100,000 bond, it's a $100,000 forfeiture. I mean,
Is it the judge that says, okay, now's the time to pay up if it gets to that point? Who makes the decision, all right, we want the money?
State law. 270 days from date of forfeiture, there's a hearing set called, first of all, the day after the person misses court, I'm sued. It's called judgment nisi. And they sue the bondsman and for the money of whatever the bond is. And then I got 270 days to catch that person. On a misdemeanor, I have 180 days. And so who's paying these forfeitures now on misdemeanors? Nobody.
Right. Well, and it doesn't look like it happens a lot in felony cases, does it?
No. I mean, you see motion to revoke.
Right.
Bonds.
Yeah. But there's no paper trail that shows Judge so-and-so said, okay, bail bonding company, it was $200,000. Where's the $200,000?
Yeah, well, in 270 days, there's a final judgment. You can ask for a 105-day extension, and you always get it's a mandatory thing under state law for
right.
the documents. But then you got to cough it up.
Right.
You got to have the money. If not, you'll lose your license.
Now, are those documents part of the file, like
what you can see on the Harris County District Clerk's website? Yes.
Yeah. Right.
All that's there.
Right.
So you guys were basically kind of made the bad guys. You guys kind of got blamed by several elected officials as one of the major factors in the rising crime rates. I mean, when you saw that, what was your? I mean, I was like, wow, that's a new one. I mean, I can't imagine what you guys in the industry.
It's kind of like the excuse my dog ate it.
You're blaming us,
right?
I mean, what was your? I mean, did you expect this, or what was your initial reaction?
Well, immediately, when I saw it, I realized it was a red herring. When the mayor talked about it in the city council, I had to challenge him. I said, man, this is a red herring. All this is trying to distract from what I'm doing about the judges. And
right.
They did that after I had the press conference.
Yeah, right. Yes,
They had to come up with something.
Right.
And they wanted to attack bondsmen then because they said, you guys are the problem.
Right.
Y'all are getting the people out. And so they didn't tell the whole story, but they told enough of the story to try to take.
But you guys have been getting people out for decades.
Right.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, for decades you've been doing this and no one ever, threw a dart and said, and all of a sudden now, you're being looked at with a fine-tooth microscope, and looking at every little bit. And then of course we find out that some of the companies were doing less than a 10%, and that causes a major, uproar.
Right, but I think when you look at the whole bail bonding industry, that was a small segment that would, they were doing this 2%, 3% payment plan kind of a thing. But again, keep in mind, it's the judge that decides, right? It's the judge that's saying, okay, Randy Wallace, I'm gonna grant you a whatever bond. So it has to start with them.
Right, and remember this, that if the bondsman didn't give them a payment plan, they could go and borrow the money someplace to pay it. And it's just that the bondsman's loaning them the money, basically.
Right.
And it's called a promissory note.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. The fact hold on. It's not, look, it's the co-surety that the payment plan is with, not the defendant.
Okay.
Get it out of your mind that I ever bonded anybody that paid me money. Nobody ever paid me the money to get them out of jail. They don't have any money. They're in jail.
Right.
The family members paid me. The family members signed
Sure.
the promissory note.
Yeah.
The family member are the co-sureties on the bond, not the defendant.
Right.
So to say that the deal was made, I mean, I've had business people that I've known, and they come to me and say, "Hey, my son's in jail. Can you help me on this bond?" Sure. Well, what do you charge me? Well, what do you want to give me? Because I mean, I've known you for 20, 30 years.
Right.
You own a multi-million-dollar business. The fee is this. I mean, if you pay me half of it in full, I'll take that. So you got to remember that you're not getting the money from the defendant. You're getting it from the family, the co-sureties,
Somebody
who
else
signed the
is putting
agreement.
it up.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
For you.
Yeah.
And that's when you asked me earlier, did I catch most of them? You better believe I did. But on the other hand, if I hadn't, I would sue the co-surety or take their property.
Right. Yeah, I mean, theoretically, if my mother posted the bond, I flee, you never find me. And I mean, if part of the deal is the house that she lives in, then, right? I mean,
you can't take a house, a homestead, but if she had a property that wasn't homesteaded, then yes, you can take.
If she had some rental property,
and I had a lot of that. I had rental property. I had one of the things that I would always try to get from a husband and wife is their wedding rings. If I knew they were in love, I didn't want the wedding rings, but it meant something to them. You got to. The reason I wanted it is because they didn't want to give it.
Yeah.
And if they didn't want to give it, then I definitely wanted it.
Yeah.
And all I would do is get them to sign a note, and I put it.
That's
in
the ultimate till death do you part.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. The value of the ring might have been $400 or $500, but the bond might have been $30,000. But it's that ring.
Because it means something.
It meant something.
Yeah.
It's an heirloom, and the intrinsic value is so important to the family.
Well, and too, like what we're seeing is people that are on bond for 2-3 years. The whole system was never set up to be this long-term thing, right? You're supposed to be out on bond for maybe a few months, several months, then you go to trial. You're not supposed to be walking around on bond
For 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's nonsensical.
And what are they doing in the meantime? They're not working. And it's like I told my grandson one day, I said, "Son, are you working?" "No, sir." "Well, if you're not working, you're stealing." "What do you mean?" I said, "You're stealing from somebody. You're going to steal from me because I'm going to feed you. Are you stealing from your mama? Are you stealing from somebody?
Yeah.
So if you ain't working, you're stealing."
That's a good point.
You might say, "Well, I haven't gone in," and that brings up another subject. I have only seen 2 misdemeanor theft charges for shoplifting since 2017. Since all this, love the the victim.
Yeah,
The victim being the person who committed the crime,
Right.
not the person who had his stuff stolen.
yeah,
That's the true victim.
yeah,
So you can go into Walmart. They won't arrest you. Have you talked to these people? They won't arrest
No.
anybody anymore. You know what they do? They just follow you around and say, hey, you need to put that up. Hey, we're
Isn't that
going to
crazy?
take a picture of you. You can't come back in the store no more.
Well, you go into some of the retail stores and you see a lot of the objects, the property actually under lock and key.
yeah,
Yeah, but because there's no accountability.
yeah.
And if they're stealing it and there's no prosecution for it, what would keep me? I mean, it's like one guy said, I don't buy batteries. They fit in your pocket.
Yeah, well, whenever you're in a situation where there's no consequences for your actions, there's going to be a problem. And that's like with this, you put somebody out on bond, they pick up a new criminal charge, they're right back out on bond. What's the consequence for picking up a new criminal charge? Nothing, because you're free again.
And in fact, if you never go to court on a misdemeanor case, you never get convicted, you don't have a criminal history record. All you have is an arrest record.
Right.
Right, Andy?
So, exactly. So you guys obviously are going to be a focus in the next upcoming legislative session.
Absolutely.
And also, and I know you big on this too. You were big on it in the primary. People really need to go out this November when they vote and pay attention to the judge races.
Oh, let me tell you, a judge is going to have a whole lot more effect on your life, your day-to-day life, than who the president is, because you have judges that are criminal judges, you have probate judges, you have civil judges, and these judges, family judges. I mean, the only time I ever came close to getting put in jail, Andy, was in a family court. When my daughter went through a divorce, something happened in that courtroom, and I stood up and I said some things that the judge didn't appreciate.
Now, you did
I was
it.
overwhelmed. I mean,
How long ago was that?
it was probably about 15 years ago.
Right. Now, if you did it today, you'd be locked in.
Well, they said, because I wasn't a council member, but I was a bondsman, and the bailiff came and got me, and he said, hey, let's go out here. They put me in a room for a while and calmed me down. He said, look, I'm gonna give you two choices. You can either leave here and not go back to the courtroom ever again while this case is going on, or you know what the other is. I said, okay, I'm going home.
No, it's kind of like what Randy and I have said, this is why we're really squeaky clean. You and I both know if any of us did anything and ended up, yeah, okay, Mr.
Your bond is $4 billion.
You want the high bonds?
You're gonna get it.
Right, that's the truth.
What do we got tonight?
Hey, be sure to tune in tonight, Fox 26 News at 9 for breaking bond segment that we're going to be working on today for you. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Please come back anytime.
Well, I want you to know I'm one of them elected officials that'll call these people out.
One of the few. I'm telling you, you are one of the few elected officials.
One of the few, the proud.
Yes, you've seen this issue and you've been jumping up and down like we have, saying this needs to stop.
Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate Andy for what he's done. I'm just so glad he's here at Crime Stoppers.
Me too. Thank you.
We do have a Facebook comment from Annette. She says, "Do we have bond conditions in place? If not, take notes from Montgomery County, please."
Every single I don't care what you're charged with. The one condition everybody has when they're out on bond: do not break the law. Do not pick up a new criminal charge. Correct?
Yeah, that would be priority number one.
Yeah.
And there's bond conditions on every
Yes.
bond that's set.
Yeah, and it can be very, like if it's a domestic violence situation, they'll say you cannot come within 1,000 feet of so-and-so. Yeah, it varies from defendant to defendant. It's interesting that you brought that up, Annette. Thank you, Annette. Because that's what we're looking at in tonight's breaking bond, because we've noticed many times that defendants, they don't adhere to the conditions of their bond, and yet nothing seems to really happen.
It's like anything else, the bond conditions are as good as the person who wants to honor it. They
There you
want to
go.
honor it, it's the greatest thing in the world. If they don't, it's something on a piece of paper and it's not going to stop them.
It's like electronic monitoring devices. In my personal opinion, that's like this false sense of security, because it's basically up to the defendant to get one, and then it's up to pretrial services to make sure that they're notifying the court when it's violated. And how many times have we seen people commit crimes wearing an electronic monitor?
For the record, mine is.
Well,
It's on. So there, I got proof.
he can only wear that color sock because that's the color of the device. Hey, thank you all so much. We appreciate you watching, and be sure to tune in to Breaking Bond on Fox 26 News at 9. Thank you so much.